I'll just. Presentation?
Like 2%.
Oh, got it.
The first slide. 52, got it.
Okay. Oh, sorry.
Okay, so ready to begin?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
All right, greetings, everyone. I'm Janie Hernandez. I'm VP of Human Resources at LIP Fund. So I welcome you.
Sorry, one more thing.
Oh,
That way you're.
oh, good, that's better. Yes.
Just gonna move this out of the way for you. How do you move it?
You just click and pull. Other thing.
I don't know.
Sorry.
Okay.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, we're good. Thank you.
All right, greetings, everyone. Thank you for having me here. I'm Janie Hernandez. I'm Vice President of Human Resources at LIP Fund. Our topic today is employee handbooks.
Sorry. The slides.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Okay, so part of this presentation is going to present a few topics of interest. It's going to present the purpose and intent of handbooks, the construction of the actual handbook, managing and updating the handbook, delivering it and notarizing it. And then at the end, we'll have a summary and a Q&A. So the purpose and intent of your handbook, before we get into that subject, I want to make sure that we think about this question. What is important to you? What is important to you as an entrepreneur? What is important to you as a business person, as someone who is interested in having a business or owns a business and wants to succeed in the business? Not only in the business sector, but what is important to you in your life? You know, your family, your relatives, those kinds of things. Think about what is important to you. The way that your important items are going to be supported is going to be through how you support yourself, how you support your important items, how you want to support your business. What things do you have in place that are going to help your business and to become successful? So in your employee manual, you're going to have a purpose. It's going to show that it's employee-centric. It's also going to show that it's company-centric. So employee-centric would mean that you're going to show the employee what you can expect and how they are to behave. It's going to show that the new hires know who they're joining. What is your company about? How clear are you in what you're expecting? And the employees will know what decisions are made of and why they should be included. Supervisors will know how to lead and how to correct and what are correctable offenses. These are the things that the employer will convey to the employee. As a company, it's gonna show who you are. This is who we are. This is what we expect as employers. It presents an opportunity to share your culture, what you're about, and the behaviors that you want displayed in your company. What kind of values will guide the decisions in your organization? And again, what is important to us? So based on what is important to you, the intention, again, employee-centric and company-centric, they're almost the same. You want to be able to communicate your policies and your procedures and be transparent. You want to show good relations and fairness. You want to show what the rules of engagement are, your expectations, and the consequences of those expectations. If you have benefits, you want to display them in the manual, your brand, and your values. Again, as a company, you want to show that you are compliant to legal policies. You'll have notices and policies in place. You'll show consistency, equality, and fairness. Again, centric to your brand and your values. Now, the communication of your policies, you want to be able to communicate those to your employees. And how are you going to do that? You want to be able to show what your foundation is, what is unique about your organization. what makes you stand or distinguish you from others that are similar to your company? A good thing to show on your employee manual is to show your company's history. Maybe a message from the founder and the CEO, the owner. You may want to include, hey, we've been in this, we've been in business for the past 10 years. It was started by my father, who has now passed it on to me, and you want to continue a legacy. That's just an example of your company's history and the message from your founder and CEO. You want to make it easy to read. You don't want to fill it up with too many policies, too many rules, too many regulations, or too many operational steps. It's got to be easy to read, and it's got to be easy to understand. You want to be able to update it on a regular schedule. And that doesn't mean you're going to update it every January and every July. You want to update it regularly enough to where you show what's current, that you're addressing the current ordinances, that you're complying with the law. You also want to be very gender neutral. You don't want to point out that women can't wear nail polish. A better phrase would be nail polish is prohibited. Okay, you're not pointing at one gender over the other. This page indicates examples of a handbook. Now, this particular one here shows that there is a place to log on to and see the best employee handbook examples. This was updated in 2022. The site is called airmason.com, AIRMASON.com. So it shows an outline of what the employee handbook can have. It'll show the important elements of what an employee handbook should have. There are free search engines for you to look for any templates. And the best thing, though, is to have a lawyer or someone with legal expertise to review it before it gets published or before you provide it to any employees. There are no two employee manuals that will be alike. Again, it's going to concentrate on your particular business, on your particular, what's important to you, again, what you're expecting of an employee, what the employee can expect of you as an employer. So again, as just to get an idea of different types of templates, it's good to go to airmason.com. The construction of the actual employee manual. Okay, it's good to start with a welcome letter. Again, have a letter there from the founder or the owner, just to welcome a new hire. Say, we welcome you. You know, this is our business. This is what we pride ourselves in. And remember, they interviewed, they were selected. So you want to make it a nice welcome letter. You may want to make reference to the history or the tone of your culture. Add a mission statement, show your ethics. An organizational chart is also very helpful. Remember, this is a new person coming into your business. You want them to know who is who. Also maybe show some client or customer stories in it, and then your philosophy of your management style. You want to include in this manual information about employee conduct. Now, there's a conflict of interest policy that you can add if you'd like. You don't want to make it too broad because some of these policies can be very, very broad, and you lose someone. You can lose someone in the verbiage of it. But you want to make sure that there is a conflict of interest, maybe to show that there's a non-disclosure statement, that they will hold things, they'll limit things to confidentiality. Some of these no solicitation agreements can be enforced. Remember now that some people are working more than one job. Some people are working, 2 jobs, maybe 3 jobs. So you don't want to make it too difficult for their policy to conflict with another job that they need. You don't want to make it hard for them to, or you don't want to limit your competitor's ability to hire workers, and you don't want to make it difficult for an employee to earn a living. Ethics and conduct. Ethical conduct. Now, you need to train dilemmas, not just do's and don'ts. Don't just add into your manual what you should do and what you shouldn't do. You really need to train people how to do this or how to avoid that, because there will be consequences to everything. So what you have in your manual is what you need to practice in your real life, in your day-to-day work life. If you have a certain policy about gifts and gratuities or meals and tips, et cetera, you want to make sure you include those. How about protection or use of firm assets? Do you give company cell phones, or do you provide a company cell phone? How can they use it? How can they protect it? Do you provide equipment to them? Any kind of maybe computer systems or telephones or things of that nature? How are they to be utilized, and what are the limitations? Also, an employee has a right to discuss working conditions. They may have a beef about something. They may say, you know what, the bathroom over there isn't working anymore. And you may think, well, that's not our problem. No, it is your problem. You need to encourage and let your employees know that they can trust you in reporting certain working conditions and that you are there to fix them. You want to make things better for them. Remember, these are things that are important to you. These are things that people that work for you will help support what is important to you. Outside employment. Anything about tobacco? Do you allow tobacco chewing? Do you allow e-cigarettes or vaping? Those types of things need to be included. Political activities. If you're an entity that is funded by federal funds, federal law prohibits those, okay, from becoming candidates in certain elections. If you're involved, or if someone in the company is involved in some kind of a political event or political activity, they probably need to take some time off in order to be able to partake. You can't stop a person from free speech, but you can stop harassment, bullying, or out of control disruption. So do you need to have a policy in there about political activities? Do you need to have some kind of political affiliation added to non-discrimination? These are important things, especially in today's climate. Solicitation, distribution, and bulletin boards. Okay, bulletin boards are a good source of information. Sometimes you can have something in the break room. Maybe they can advertise, hey, I have some property for rent, or I'm selling my car. This is a good place to get the word out, but you don't want to have anything in there that's going to distract or disrupt or take anyone's personal time. You can't control public property, and you can't control personal time. So if someone does something like this on their own time, away from work hours, that would be acceptable. But you want to mitigate that type of activity at the workplace. And in order to do that, you have to have it outlined in your employee manual. EEO, AAP, and non-discrimination. Equal employment opportunity and affirmative action. Okay, so these are things that you have to outline in your employee manual to employees and to applicants. You want to make sure that you outline all terms and conditions of employment. Protected classifications, you want to know what those classifications are. That is very important. And those classifications, they're at the federal level, at the state level, and at the local or city level. So you want to make sure that you know what those classifications are so that those classes are protected. If someone has a complaint against something that would fall under protected class, you can't restrict them. You don't want them just to write a report. You can speak with them. Don't restrict it just to a written report. Immigration and compliance. Okay, this is a commitment to hiring authorized workers. You want to make sure that that's in your employee manual. And to comply with the law, it does involve or require an I-9 process. There is a Form I-9. The Form I-9 basically states that the employer, you as an employer, have verified that your new employee has the eligible documentation in order to work with you. There's the ADA and genetic compliance as well. ADA is the Americans with Disabilities Act. You want to make sure that you have job descriptions written for each of your positions that are available and what they require. You want to make sure that someone who applies for these jobs does meet those eligibility guidelines as well. GINA is the Genetic Information Non-Discriminatory Administration. You cannot discriminate against someone either. GINA is basically having knowledge of someone who maybe has a certain condition, and you discriminate against them and just say, no, this kind of genetic condition runs in the family. We better not hire her. That is protected as well. Harassment, sexual and general harassment. As much as the Me Too movement has made things happen in the most recent 5 years or so, those kinds of things, those kinds of conditions still exist. You want to have a legal definition, a very clear and concise legal definition in your employee manual of what will not be tolerated. You want to cover everyone. You want to cover your employees, your clients, your vendors, and it's a two-way street. You're talking about sexual harassment from someone who works for you in an external sense, a vendor, and then someone who works for you in the internal sense as an employee. It goes all the way around. So there has to be investigation if something is reported. It has to be very critical. And there's no retaliation if someone does report something. There has to be an investigation. There's an appeals process. Also consensual relationships or a love contract. Usually it's not unheard of that there is an office romance. These individuals you might want to clarify things to make sure that there indeed is a contract that they both agree that they are in a relationship and that they understand what the repercussions are if there is some kind of harassment involved. Let's say once that agreement is broken or they decide to part ways, they have to be aware that what the implications could be as well. Are you going to allow nepotism or relatives to work in the same area, the same department? Those things are very, very important. These are the types of items that could present some kind of litigation or a legal problem. Your employee manual is like your first line of defense to make sure that these things are mitigated. If you have something about these in your employee manual, they will work on your behalf. There's a substance abuse policy. You want to have that in there as well. I don't know if you want to do any testing. That could be done randomly. I used to work at a company where anytime someone had an accident, anytime one of the drivers had an accident, they needed to not just report it, but they also needed to take some testing. So there are consequences involved. What do you want to put in your employee manual about that? Do you have drivers? Are you going to require drivers? You want to make sure that all of these things are covered as well. Attendance is big. Of course, attendance and tardiness, whether it's regular or predictable, what are the considerations that you're going to make about attendance? Are you going to allow someone to be tardy a few times? If you're going to allow someone to be tardy a few times, you have to allow everybody to be tardy a few times. How will that impact your business? If someone is tardy because they're ill, they need to let you know. They really need to know who to contact when these things happen. I'm going to be late, or I'm not feeling well. I'm not going to report today. They always need to have someone who they can contact so that they can report their time and report their reason for not showing up. Sometimes a doctor's note will do. If they are absent for a few days and there's a no call, then what do you assume? You have to put that in your policy. What will happen if they are absent for a few days in a row and they do not contact anyone? That's very important, because if someone was to be released, let's say you discharge someone because of poor attendance and it's not written in your manual, this person can file a complaint, and it can show that, hey, well, there's no policy about it. No one ever told me anything. And, that might have an impact right there. So you want to make sure that you outline these types of things. It's a given fact that when someone doesn't show up to work, their work gets done, whereas the person who stays behind, who reports to work, ends up having to do that extra work. And sometimes they indeed fall behind on their own work. So there's got to be a sense of fairness about attendance. Then there's the work-life benefits. Are you going to offer flexible hours? Well, what are those flexible hours and how are you basing them? Is there job sharing? How is that going to work? And how does that impact the business? How does that impact the employee? Is it pet friendly? Is it child friendly? All of those are things that you might want to add as your values, your value system. The statutory benefits, the benefits that are required to be deducted, of course, would be your Social Security, workers' compensation, and unemployment. Other benefits could be education or tuition or a loan repayment. So are you offering educational or tuition assistance if you send someone to take a course that's job related? Maybe training and development programs, something that will enhance the job that they're doing now. Will you provide that for them? You want to make sure that this is something that's work related and that it's something that you approve of because it's going to enhance their job. Are there company discounts? Are there uniforms? Are they required to wear a uniform? And how are you going to manage that? Are you providing the uniforms? Are you providing maybe the dry cleaning for uniforms? How about safety equipment like safety shoes or glasses? Is that something you are providing as an employer? Maybe you want to have an employee recognition program. How do you want to outline that? Now, there's also a bonus plan that could also backfire. For instance, there was a company that I worked for. It's the same one that if someone had an accident, of course, they had to report it. If they were maybe 6 months or 12 months accident free, they would get a bonus. But sometimes that would mean that they weren't necessarily safe. They just didn't report it. So that's something that could backfire. There is discretionary time off. Okay, how are you going to outline this? This is very, very important because there's vacation time, there's sick days, there's holidays. All of these things come into play in your daily life. How are you going to acknowledge these or provide these for your employees? There's an anniversary or calendar year. There's a grant method. There's a classification of a leave scale. Leave requests, what is the process? Do they go through their payroll system? Do they go directly to their manager? How is this leave request processed and how is it calculated? How is it taken care of? How is it paid accordingly? These things are very important to have in your manual. Now there's personal leaves of absence. Okay, that's different from vacation. That's different from leave. That's different from sick leave. But maybe there's FMLA. Again, there are rules that surround the FMLA policies. How long is this leave of absence going to last? Is it unpaid? There's a lot of discretion that goes around a leave of absence. It's got to be supported. Are you requiring it to be supported by a health professional? Those things are very important. Compensation administration. Okay. In your handbook, you don't want to include any kind of promises of a raise. Like say every 3 months you get a raise or every 6 months you get a raise. You don't want to promise that because a person has to be productive. Remember, they are supporting the things that are important to maintain that business. And you as an employer also have something to provide or should provide something to the employee for doing their part in this as well, in supporting the business. So those things, some things have to be defined very clearly. This is where it gets a little stickier. You want to make sure that you know the rules around these. What are the pay periods? What are the pay dates? What if there was an error in payment? How do you manage that? What's the calculation method? What if they work overtime? Are they allowed to work overtime? What is your pay week? Define your pay week. Is it Sunday through Saturday? Is it Monday through Friday? What are the hours? It is very important to have those details in your employee manual. If they happen to change, you want to update that. So whatever is the current rule or the current regulation or the current plan is what needs to be in your employee manual today. There's privacy of information. Okay, there should be files on each employee. There's an employment file or employee record, and those should be kept confidential. But what do you maintain in there? What do you have in there? If there's medical information, the medical information is even more stricter than an employee record. And the medical information, because of the privacy issues that go with that, those need to be kept in a separate file. So are you allowing those to be viewed by the employee? You know, you have to know what the rules are by state because different states have different laws around this. So it's very, very important to have the proper procedure if someone were to ask for privacy information. Should they see it? Should they not? And why? All of this is to guide and to protect your employment. There's employment at will. Employment at will. We know Texas is an employment at will state. Basically, it states that there's no employment guarantee, that there's not a contractual arrangement if someone is working for you. And the bottom line is an employee or an employer can end the relationship at any time for any reason or no reason. I may go off to lunch and come back from lunch, and my employer may tell me that they no longer need my services. There's no reason. They can do that. I can come back from lunch, or maybe I refuse to come back from lunch and just say, hey, I'm no longer happy there. I'm not coming back anymore. Okay, I've made that voluntary choice and I can do that. There's no notice that is required. But if there is an underlying reason or a reason that appears suspicious or outwardly discriminatory, it needs to be managed that way. This kind of employment at will policy, though, it should be included in your employment manual. It should be included in the offer letter, and it probably should be included in your employee manual more than once. There's an initial employment period. Sometimes there's like a 90-day time frame. For lack of a better word, it used to be called probation. I'm on my 90 days probation, or I'm on my job probationary time. That word is no longer allowed. It should be introductory, or your initial time, or your evaluation time. Maybe it's a training time, but it's no longer a probationary time, because that denotes kind of a contradictory type of situation. But in that time frame, this initial employment period or this introductory time, you have to communicate to your employee what is it that you expect in this time frame. Sometimes you figure, hey, maybe 90 days is enough. Maybe 90 days in that time frame, they get their training, they ask questions, they take notes, they learn the system, they learn how to operate the machines, or whatever it is that they need to learn. That might be the time frame that you suggest. So you have to define that time frame. So it's still an at-will condition during and after this time period. Discipline and evaluations. There's discipline steps or coaching shows fairness, the opportunity to improve. Now, discipline and evaluations, they're not supposed to be derogatory. You know, these should be coaching situations. I once heard a manager tell one of his new up-and-coming supervisors that, he selected him because he had good managerial skills. He had good knowledge of his job. Well, when that new supervisor was called upon to discipline one of the people that reported to him, he had to write this person up. But in this write-up, he sounded, how can I say, very strict. He says, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. And his manager then had to call him back on it and let him know, look, this is not instructions. We're not giving these people instructions on the do's and don'ts. We're coaching them. We're coaching them on what is to be done. You want to be careful not to undercut the at-will status. That might give a person, reason to leave, but they would have a reason because, hey, they were called down on something and they were instructed in a very disciplinary, derogatory fashion. So you don't want to do that. You want to be able to just coach people. And there are ways to do this. You don't want to offend the person, but you want to do this on a comprehensive schedule. You want to provide an evaluation for everyone, to be fair, on a schedule. Separation of services. When someone leaves the organization, that is a separation of service. Now, they can leave on a voluntary basis, or they can leave on an involuntary basis. Sometimes an involuntary termination is when the company says they no longer need their services. Sometimes it's retirement, or sometimes it's on the basis of a job abandonment. So that would be an involuntary situation. They didn't call, they didn't show up for an X number of days. It went against one of their policies, so therefore they have been separated from the job. Sometimes when it's a voluntary resignation, someone is saying, hey, I'm leaving because I have another job, or for whatever reason, a written notice should include that resignation. It should be signed, and it doesn't have to be long or dramatic. It can just say, look, after careful consideration, I've decided to leave my job. This is my last day. So again, it's just, that would be a voluntary resignation, that meaning that the employee decided to voluntarily leave. There's got to be a communication at the end when someone is leaving. Talk about the items that still that they were involved in, maybe their benefits. When is their last pay? When is their, maybe have an exit interview. And this would be a good opportunity. An exit interview is a good opportunity to get some information about how to improve things. Ask them, what is your primary reason for leaving? While you were here, what was the best part of your job? Or what was the worst part of your job? You would be surprised what will come of an exit interview that will help improve the situation once they're gone. Employee appearance and safety. This is another big deal because sometimes in some places, some people might be making a personal, professional appearance in front of customers. So you want to be sure that you do indeed, first of all, have a dress code, but you want to limit it. You don't want to say that this for girls, this for guys. You may want to say, hey, there's uniforms, costs and cleaning is included. Perhaps it's something that has to do with the type of work that they do. Maybe they work on a certain piece of equipment. So you need to let them know. Maybe you need to have certain safety types of equipment, and that is required. On the right side, you're going to see there's a list of Starbucks update. Their tattoo policy is that they didn't want no tattoos on the face or the neck. 2 piercing ears, small, moderate, 10 millimeter gauge, a small nose ring or a nose stud, but not a ring. Okay, so a small nose stud, but not a ring. They would permit that. No brow piercing, no unnatural hair color like pink, purple, green, blue. You can make it as specific as you want it to be. Safety and security. Proactively report unsafe conditions, security concerns. Okay, so maybe it's too It's too scary to walk down that hall to get to the ladies' room. I probably would need to report that because it has to do with protection. It has to do with security. As an employer, you want to listen to that. Maybe there's a domestic violence situation. You want to be able to have something in place should something occur. You want to be able to have full access to safety and security procedures. Same as for visitors and your employees. And what would you do in an emergency procedure or in a case of an emergency? Fire, do you have the right equipment? Do you know where to call should a fire take place? If there was an accident or an injury, what would you do? If there's a bomb threat or an active shooter, you need to have some kind of a program or a process plan in place. So there's a safety program, there's OSHA obligations, and of course, depending on what your company is about, what your service is, or what your product is, it might require some stricter OSHA obligations. Some of them require some kind of a data sheet when these things happen. These things have to be kept in mind for when the work process is occurring. Maybe the use of equipment, maybe welding, in those types of industries, those OSHA obligations are even more strict. Always inform yourself of what those might be. Maybe have some signage in those different areas where some of these accidents might occur, so people will know what to do. Maybe have a drill, have a fire drill, or inform people, hey, these signs are up for this reason, and this is what we need to do. Workplace injury or illness reporting. Again, there should always be someone who who to contact, be it your supervisor, be it a coworker, be it your manager. If there's going to be some illness or you can't report to work because of illness, you can't retaliate against someone for reporting that they're sick. Okay, there's different types of treatment in different states, so you want to make sure that you are informed the state that you're in for specified physician or non-emergency situations. Post-accident substance testing, is that required? Are you requiring it? Does OSHA require it of you because of the type of business that you're in? There should always be a report of an injury process. You should always have some kind of a plan. Check with your insurance person and ask what types of forms should be kept on file, what type of reports should be taken. If it's required, they may have to do an investigation on the accident. Maybe it has something to do with faulty equipment. Maybe it has to do with having to train people again. It's very, very important. Again, all of these items are to support what's important to you in that business. Severe weather and emergency closures. Just like it happened during snowvid, there were how many days of snow, and many people could not go out. They weren't allowed to go out because of the hazardous conditions on the road. There was a time when I remember we were off for 3 days because there were icy conditions, and there were 3 consecutive days. And our boss did tell us, look, it's too hazardous to go out, just stay home. And because this is a regular type of workday, but because there's inclement weather, you will get paid for that day. So how is that absence going to be counted? How is that absence going to be handled in your company? Remember, it's always about safety first. If you provide pay, you have to determine for how long. Sometimes there are morale issues if they aren't taken care of correctly. During the snowvid time, since most people were working remotely, they were already at home, so they were allowed to continue working at home. But in some situations, there was no power. There were power outages. So again, that brought in another level of expectation for this weather closures. Okay, vehicles. Are any of your employees required or authorized to drive on company business? Are these vehicles owned by the company? Is this their personal vehicle? If it is indeed the type of company that requires that, there are certain limitations or certain maximum limits that insurance coverage should provide. So you always want to make sure that their motor vehicle records are updated, that they're checked regularly. If there is some kind of accident or maybe tickets that were issued and it shows up on those motor vehicle records, how are you going to manage that? How are you going to handle that driver? Again, they need to provide that motor vehicle record. They need to provide the driver's license. It's up to them to keep it current. But it's up to you as an employer to do a motor vehicle record every so often. If they're driving and there are parking fees, how is that going to be managed? If they're driving and there's damage to a company vehicle, how is that going to be managed? Those are the types of things that affect your company, and you need to make sure that you have certain policies in place. Violence in the workplace. This is similar to harassment. This is similar to bullying. This could be the same as emotional violence and physical violence. Acts and threats. Sometimes it's in person. Sometimes it can be by mail or technology. Maybe a message is sent and comes across the email, and it does harass. It does bully someone. How is that going to be handled? Because remember, everything that goes through those computers at your place of business belong to the company. They belong to you. So therefore, you need to realize, how are they going to be managed? First of all, have a policy in place, and then realize how it's going to be handled should it occur. Technology and social media. This is something where you want to ensure that, because everyone's involved in some type of social media at some level or another, you want to make sure that employees are not, that they do not post anything that makes it look like it's the position of the company. Okay, it makes, especially if they're using company-owned equipment, you have to make sure that you have a policy in place that they do not share any type of information that makes it look like it's the position that the company takes. Also, along the lines of technology, telephones, landline, cell phones, voicemail, cameras, faxes, copiers, computer systems, all of this stuff belongs to the company if this is provided to them. So again, you need to protect that, and the best way to protect that is to have a policy about how this is to be managed. Let's see. So managed and updated employee manuals. How often are you going to update them? Are you going to update them every 4th of July? But what if nothing happened between last 4th of July and this 4th of July? Or what if a lot happened between July 4th and July 30th? You need to go ahead and make sure that you revisit this manual, because the manual has to have current information, not information from last year that had a different vacation schedule or that had different hours of operation. You need to make sure that it reflects the current situations and current ordinances. So it has to always be valid. You always want to make sure that it is valid. Should something occur and maybe it go into litigation, it's not going to help if you see that the policy manual hadn't been updated in a long time, and therefore that particular course could run against you because you hadn't updated the manual, because it wasn't clearly stated in there what the current policy should be. It's to protect what's important to you. Remember that. So delivered and notarized. Now, you want to make sure that when you talk to an employee, that you go through it. You're not going to just give them the handbook and say, oh yeah, here's your handbook. Read it when you get a chance. It's best to go through it with them. Don't count on them reading it on their own. They have so much to do, so much to learn, that they may or may not be able to do it. There's no guarantee. So it's best to sit down with them, go through it, at least the highlighted points that are very, very important, and who they are supposed to, what they're supposed to do in what situation. You should have that also a signed acknowledgement form that they did receive it and that they've acknowledged that they have received it and that they understand the policies and the reasons for the policies. So don't just distribute it, train them on it. Okay, so that pretty much summarizes, and I hope that it provides you enough information about setting up an employee manual. Just keep in mind that it should be clear, should be concise, it should be consistent. Now, what you do outside, in the workplace should be what is written in the policy manual. It should be compliant with all of the ordinances that related to your style of business, to your type of industry, and it should be the proper culture fit. And I'm going to leave some information here with Ryan to let them know that if there are any handouts required or requested, they will have those available to you. It'll have information on how to, what things to make sure that to include in an employee manual, how to put an employee manual together, and what the resources are. There's many out there. There are so many ways of putting an employee manual together, but you want to make sure you have it in an orderly fashion. You want to make sure that you indeed get it reviewed by someone in the legal field, maybe someone in employment law, to be able to give you some tips and advice on how to keep those policies going. Yeah, if there are any questions, you're certainly open. We're open to them. Please ask away.
And we can. You can find it. But like.
And feel free to unmute yourself or put it in the chat if you'd like.
Also, keep in mind that if you have personal questions concerning a policy or something that's related to your particular industry, please send those questions. If I'll be happy to look into them to make sure that I get a complete and concise answer for you.
Okay, well, I guess if there are no questions, we just want to say thank you, Janie, so much for sharing with us your time and sharing with us your knowledge for, yeah, I'm unmuted.
You're muted?
Oh, I'm unmuted. No, I'm yes. So sorry, guys. Thank you so much, Janie, for taking the time to spend with us. We really appreciate you providing that knowledge base that you take with us every day in our Lift Fund sphere and sharing it out with the community at large of entrepreneurs. And so, I always think this is a great way for us to share our knowledge and skills with those that are looking to build those knowledge and skills. So again, I just want to say thank you for taking the time.
Thank you all.
Awesome.
If you have.
Yeah, and for those of you that attended and for those of you that will watch later, we do have handouts available and we can forward them to you via email once we receive them. And so if you have any other questions, feel free. You can always email us and we can try to get more information on that specific topic. Or if you have anything else, feel free to let us know. But I appreciate you all taking the time and thank you so much for being here. I'm going to go ahead and end the session now.